In this episode, we're going to hear from someone in Kittanning, Pennsylvania, who swears they encountered some creature that escaped from a nearby facility. Then we head to the Pacific Northwest and we hear from a man and his dog who had a very close encounter with something very large. And finally, back to the East Coast to hear from a couple who saw something terrifying while camping. So without further ado, let's get into the stories. Hi Donovan, I have something absolutely terrifying to share. This happened 3 months ago behind my house in Kittanning, PA. I had a few friends over on a Saturday evening and we were all hanging out in my backyard having a cornhole tournament. I recently got really into cornhole, and so did a few of my friends, so now we play every chance we get. I've spent so much money on the different kinds of bags you wouldn't believe. Anyways, it's about 8 p.m. and we had been playing for a few hours and having some drinks when we started hearing this really weird noise coming from the back of my property. We were playing under the lights because I have this big old spotlight in my backyard, so we can play late at night. Now, I'm a hunter and so are a lot of my friends, and we all hear this noise and no one recognizes what it could be. I don't even know if I could describe it, but imagine a bullfrog mixed with a gorilla. I know that sounds batshit crazy, but that's the best I can describe it. I know it doesn't make any sense, and we felt the same way, but we kept hearing it, so my one buddy John thought it was a good idea to go into the woods and see if we can find what's making this sound. There were 4 of us who decided to go looking, and I grabbed a spotlight and we set off into the woods. Now, when we were playing cornhole, it sounded like this thing was maybe 40 or 50 yards away, as best as I could tell. We're in the woods about where I thought it was coming from, and now the sound is even further away. So we go further in and the sound is moving like it's either trying to get away from us or trying to bait us for a trap. Well, it was certainly the latter, because what happened next is why we don't play cornhole at my house anymore. My friend John shouts out to the group, "Hey, look over by that tree." We see this thing because I don't know what else to call it. This yellowish, hairless creature standing behind the tree with its claws wrapped around the front of the tree like it was hugging it. As soon as John said that, this thing jumps out from behind the tree and starts making these crazy sounds, which sound like it's coming from the back of its throat. It had this rectangular head and very deep-set eyes that were glowing red. Its mouth looked like it had 3 or 4 rows of teeth. It looked like it could bite through an arm or leg if it got a hold of one. Its veins were also bulging all over its body. Just writing about it makes me kind of sick. It was also pretty tall, maybe a foot taller than us, but it was kind of thin but muscular. My friend Will, who is always carrying, thank God, pulled out his 9 and shot at this thing 3 times but missed. It moved as soon as he reached for his weapon. It moved so fast like it could sense what was going to happen before it occurred. That was the last we saw it. It just took off after Will shot at it. I was at a loss on what to do. I didn't report anything to the police because I don't know what to say. We go to John's house now for cornhole, and we all carry all of the time. I was renting my house, but I found another place. I don't want to live somewhere where that thing is lurking in my backyard. What on God's green earth could this have been? My friends think it escaped from some facility near my old place. There was this warehouse there that no one really knew what went on there. It's all fenced in too, and really out in the middle of nowhere. I didn't even know it existed until one of my buddies showed it to me on Google Maps. I don't know if they're running some crazy genetic experiments back there, or this thing came from another dimension or underground. But one thing is for sure, I don't want to run into it again. Thanks, Daryl. Hey Donovan, I would normally keep this type of encounter to myself, but I've really come to enjoy your show and the way you treat everyone with dignity. I don't look for trouble or drama, you know what I mean? When I got my new truck camper rig set up, I just wanted to get into the woods and soak up the peace and quiet, especially considering all the freaking problems I had to work out to get the whole thing up and running. My first trip was heading out west to the Umpqua National Forest to get some relief from this insane heat we've been having. I got to know this guy on the internet who was always talking about these incredible crystals he was finding. They were unbelievable. Stuff you'd see at gem shows for some serious money. He was digging them out of the earth. Me and my brother were always rock hounding when we were kids. I love how you can find spectacular things for free if you know where to look. It took me a couple 10-hour driving days, but me and my dog Jack made it to Grants Pass, Oregon, and got a hold of Patrick, the internet guy. He was going to get me set up with a boondocking spot near Myrtle Creek, about an hour up north. We met up at the diner there for coffee. Patrick looked like some kind of forest sprite with his green eyes and intense hair. He was shy and seemed out of place in town. He told me he knew places in the woods that most people were unaware of. Because of his hobby of planting baby fir trees, he got really into the thick of things out there. He was driving this all beat-up station wagon with the back half of the roof caved in. I followed him out of town until we accessed this creekside dirt road. Then we just kept heading west until we were surrounded by these enormous trees everywhere. I'm telling you, Donovan, they were enormous. And it was like nothing had ever been there until we arrived. And besides the sound of the river, it was dead silent. You'd think with all those trees you would hear a bird or two. Not one bird sound did I hear. Patrick showed me a spot of level ground where I could park the camper and get settled in. He took a tool roll out of the back of the station wagon and unrolled it onto the ground. There were hammers and chisels and safety goggles and headlamps and other things in there. He seemed to know what he was doing. He pulled 2 hooded black vinyl ponchos out of his backpack and whispered that I should put one on. That seemed weird to me. There wasn't any rain, but he whispered that it would keep us more concealed. I didn't understand, but I didn't argue. It was so shadowy and quiet. I already felt concealed from everything. But something about that place wouldn't even let you speak out loud. He was going to take me to one of his favorite spots upstream in exchange for me helping him list and sell his findings. I got Jack leashed up and ready to go, then Patrick said it wasn't safe to bring the dog. Not safe? What did that mean? It was strange, but it was like Patrick was someone you didn't question. Like, why are we wearing ponchos? Why can't the dog come? Why is your car bashed in? I staked Jack out on his leash and we headed into the brush beside the river. Once you got in there, you could see a faint path. It was evening and I was kind of hungry and feeling grungy and sticky from sweating through my last 2 days of driving. But I knew Patrick had limited time and this was really a rare opportunity to have such an experienced guide. The stream was really rushing along, but then we came to this spot where it widened out and partially flowed into a shallow cave. Patrick pointed at the cave like that's where we're supposed to go. We put on the headlamps and headed into the cave. It stunk. It smelled like an unwashed human had been living in there for weeks. But obviously we were pretty far off the beaten path, so I didn't know what to think. When Patrick started digging at the water's edge, right away he started uncovering these gorgeous crystals. I was stunned. How could something like that be so close to the surface? I dug in and felt like I was in a dream with these perfect specimens I was unearthing. The beauty and the odor really didn't go together. I was immersed in my search. It was so dark and quiet. Then crash! Into the mouth of the cave burst my dog Jack. He was yelping and howling and tearing at my poncho like he was possessed. He looked like a cat with all of his hair standing on end. He dragged and dragged at me, pulling me towards the cave's opening. And then I heard the most unearthly whooping sound, and this stench became truly unbearable. Rocks started raining down at the opening of the cave. Jack was all wild-eyed. All I could do was succumb to his pulling me outside. It was chaos everywhere. Rocks and water and mud and howling. And then suddenly my vision was filled with this brown hairy mass of this 10-foot tall creature. It howled and swiped at me and I ran. I followed Jack blindly out of that hell pit and didn't stop until I got us both into the truck and locked the doors. Patrick followed shortly and slammed himself into his car and took off. I was stunned. Barreling out of those woods, I was unable to make sense of anything. My 30-pound dog had ripped his stake out of the ground to come find me and save me from this thing. Later on, I was reading about Bigfoot sightings in that area. and wishing I had known that sooner. Some people even said they had used pheromones to tempt him out of hiding. I'm sure I was emitting some pretty ripe emanations that day after my lack of showering, but holy cow, I have no words. I am not looking for any trouble. Hey Donovan, I'm a psychology student at Temple University. I'm a big fan of your show and follow a lot of cryptid channels. I'm fascinated by how the human mind sees monsters in the shadows, but I've never been a big believer in the existence of legendary animals or the supernatural. However, this summer I had my own strange encounter that is making me rethink my past assumptions. I've gone over the encounter again and again in my head, and no amount of rationalization or psychological theories can explain the physical evidence I encountered. I want to tell myself that I didn't see anything supernatural, just a mundane animal that my adrenaline-fueled mind saw as demonic. But I was not alone in this encounter, and the person with me described what I saw in perfect detail. I admit I was terrified by what I saw, but the scholar in me is persistent, and I made sure to have her write down what she saw before we spoke about it. I didn't want to risk talking about it first and tainting each other's memories of the event. Sorry if I sound like a nerd, but this is why I listen to cryptozoology podcasts and YouTube channels in the first place, to understand human psychology. I guess I should give you some backstory. I was at a party 2 months back, at a friend of a friend's house in West Philly. I met a cute girl from Drexel who was an engineering major, and we hit it off. It came out in the conversation that she was big into backpacking and wanted to hike the entire Appalachian Trail after she graduated. I grew up camping a lot and being in the outdoors, so I offered to go backpacking with her sometime. Looking back, that is a little creepy to offer to take some girl you just met out into the woods all alone, but she was all for it, so we made plans to go the following weekend. I'm not from Philly, so I don't really know the area, but I heard the New Jersey Pine Barrens weren't too far, and they were known for being a vast range of wilderness, and I wanted to impress her. A casual hike on a crowded trail didn't seem like enough. So we headed to South Jersey for what I hope would be a cool experience in the Pine Barrens. It was awkward at first, just the two of us alone. There was no one else to chime in when the conversation lagged, but I thought it was still going well. We were about 3 miles into the hike when I noticed this strange smell. It was like someone had just lit off fireworks in the area. There was a sulfurous haze hanging in the air. She wrinkled her nose up and she smelled it too. She walked past me to get away from the smell, but she jumped back with a yelp. She looked at me wide-eyed and nodded to the trail behind her. A torn-up deer carcass was in the path. I could see drag marks in the sandy soil. It looked like something had purposely dropped the body there. I assume we scared off whatever predator, maybe bears or coyotes, from their kill when we got close. We walked another few miles and made our camp. Our plan was to walk to a different trail that looped back to where we parked in the morning. She brought a small tent, and it was summer, so I didn't bother bringing my own. I just tied a tarp up over me in case it rained and set my sleeping bag down. She probably would have let me in the tent, but I didn't want to presume anything. I slept for a few hours, but then something woke me up. My skin was prickling like I was in dry desert heat. The sulfur stench we smelled near the mutilated deer carcass was in the air again, but this time it was stronger. My nose and throat felt irritated like I was breathing in smoke. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, and I saw this shape at the edge of the clearing. The shape was large. It had this long horse-like head and a thin neck. I didn't see much of its body because I was distracted by its intense red eyes. My date peeked her head out of her tent and asked if I smelled the sulfur. She followed my gaze to the creature by the tree and gasped. It screeched and leapt into the air and spread these bat-like wings. As it flew away, it smashed into this tree branch about 20 feet up. We both look at each other like, what in the hell is going on? I wanted to abandon all my things and started hiking back to the car right then and there. But we both knew that we couldn't make it in the dark. We didn't sleep well the rest of the night, and I eventually went into her tent. I didn't want to be out there just under my tarp if this thing came back. Not that the tent could protect us, but at least it keeps you hidden. At first light, we got up to leave. On the way out, we saw the branch it broke on the ground, and it also left this indent on the soil where the creature took off. I haven't went camping since, but that girl that I dated is now my girlfriend. Thanks for listening to my crazy story. Let me know what you think about these stories in the comments below. And don't forget to check out Donovan Dread True Crime. I try to release there several times a week. And also check out Lilith Dread. She releases almost every single day. Thanks and take care.